Greetings, salutations, hello. To all my freaks and creeps, I'm your host, VideoVomit. Today we're going to be talking about some interesting stuff, some interesting people, and some interesting films. I hold these directors in very high regard, and recently we've lost both of them. The directors I'm talking about are Tobe Hooper and George A. Romero. Today we got a bone-chilling episode. We're going to be taking a look back on these directors, and the first director I'm going to talk about is Tobe Hooper. Tobe Hooper directed a lot of stuff, but some of the things you might be more familiar with him for are the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, Poltergeist, Salem's Lot, Lifeforce, and the Funhouse, Invaders from Mars. I'm only going to be talking about some of his movies today, but he's got a good catalog of movies that you can always check out. A lot of his movies are really good, and I feel like I mean he's huge with the horror community, but I feel like he didn't get a lot of the recognition that he deserves for a lot of the stuff that he did. Like Poltergeist is a really good movie, but he had troubles after directing that movie because of Steven Spielberg. They kind of had like this little falling out after it was released, like days before the movie Poltergeist was released. Steven Spielberg kind of publicly said that Hooper didn't really do anything on the set, and because Steven Spielberg couldn't, like contractually, he couldn't direct E.T. and Poltergeist at the same time because it looked bad, and also like they wouldn't let him do it for some reason, and so he had Hooper come on and direct Poltergeist, and I don't think that he stood around and did nothing. I mean, he was a quiet guy, but he was, you know, he made all these films, and he's a cornerstone of the horror genre for a reason. So yeah, I feel like he's big with horror fans, but maybe not as generally known, and so this is kind of an opportunity to talk about these directors. I mean, of course, you're going to know about George Romero, and I'll talk about his movies, but we're going to talk about Tobe Hooper first. So the first movie I wanted to get into is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So with the VHS copy here, there was a bunch of different releases for the VHS. I think the Wizard Video one is really cool. I don't have that one. I wish I did. I'm sure there's people out there that did. If you do have it, comment below or give a shout out. Say how much you like that tape. There's a bunch of different ones. I got the MPI home video version. This one's I think it's fairly common. I think there are other covers that are a lot more rare than this one. But you know, it's mine, so I like it. So let's talk a little bit about the movie. It's got a 7.5 on IMDb. It stars Marilyn Burns, Jim Seidow, and Gunnar Hansen. And we have the trailer for it, and I would love to take a look at that. So let's get that up and let's get it going. Yep.
What happened was true. The most bizarre and brutal series of crimes in America. This is the movie that is just as real, just as close, just as terrifying as being there. Even if one of them survives, what will be left? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. After you stop screaming, you'll start talking about it.
So here you have it, guys. The trailer for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That movie was pretty gnarly in its day. People, like, I think during the screening of it, it was just like a teaser screening, and they brought people in for it, and they're like, hey, check out this, you know, horrifying new movie. And people were like running out in terror, you know, like they couldn't handle shit like this back then, in 1974. So the plot is, it's about a brother and sister, and they're like on this road trip with 3 friends, and they're going to go visit their grandfather's grave in Texas, and they pick up this hitchhiker. And this dude is a freak. Like, he is really creepy and weird. He takes like these weird, I don't think they're Polaroids. He takes like pictures, and he's like trying to develop them in the van. They're like in this hippie van. And then he like cuts his hand. And he's like a total freaking weirdo. And then I think they kick him out, and then they like encounter the rest of this cannibalistic family, including Leatherface and the grandpa and the dad and the brother, the hitchhiker they picked up. And yeah, all hell breaks loose from there. I don't want to spoil too many of these movies. I'll try to let you know when I'm about to spoil something. But yeah, you should, if you haven't seen it, please go check it out. I would say, what the fuck's wrong with you if you haven't seen it? But yeah, it's a really good movie. I think it's great because it's really creepy. It's gross. It's like it kind of makes you feel gross. It gives you the ambiance and the immersion of like a gross film, but it's not really gross. It's, you know, like before all like the chainsaw hits or something like that, they'll cut away, or like the guy who gets nailed in the head with the hammer. That was pretty messed up. But then when he gets dragged away, everything happens behind a closed door. That meat hook scene that you saw from the trailer, she gets like thrown up there, but you don't see her. You know, you don't see the penetration. You just all you see is it's like implied. You know, it's kind of so. This movie had a hard time. They had to like edit it in a weird way so they didn't get an X rating. You know, they had a hard time trying to get it out. So some of the trivia for the movie is the director, Tobe Hooper, claimed that he got the idea for the movie while he was like just kind of standing around in the hardware department of a department store, hardware section, and he was just wondering what kind of, it was like full of people, and he was wondering what kind of carnage, like just running through, plowing through all those people with a chainsaw would do, and that kind of just like got the ball rolling for him. And some more trivia is while they were filming in the house in Texas, that house was like boarded up, you know, and so they could do the lighting properly, and it was like there's a lot of immersion that they were trying to, you know, building this gross, disgusting set. You saw the house in the trailer, and it was like insanely hot in there. Like it was like 100 degrees outside and like probably 100 more inside. And so Gunnar Hansen, the guy who R.I.P. as well, he was playing Leatherface, and he became like delirious, you know, from being stuck in that suit the whole time. And then at a certain point, he was like very irritable, and like it was like kind of like a miserable shoot for a lot of people, and even cut the main actress's hand or finger or something like that while they were shooting a scene. He like actually cut her, so that's pretty crazy. And they kept like meat around on the set, and they kept like all this gross shit, and over time it became, you know, rotting, and while it was super hot, it was only making shit worse, and so the stench was like unbearable for these actors and actresses working. And there's even rumors about there's like I think it's like the opening scene that this might be for, where there's like this corpse, this desecrated corpse, kind of wrapped around a tombstone, if I'm not mistaken, and there was rumors that was a real corpse that they used, or they used real bones in some parts of the movies. If you want to believe that, I guess that's up to you. It's part of the magic. So yeah. So we're gonna get into our first clip actually. I have this. I will say spoilers for this part. This is actually like the ending scene, and it's where Sally escapes out the window and she's running away from this dinner that she's like stuck having with this family. She's like tied down to a chair. She gets out. She jumps out the window. She just completely fraboogas right out the window, and then she starts booking it down the driveway, and yeah, so here's your spoiler warning. So if you don't want to see the ending scene, please go watch it first, then come back or whatever. But yeah, so here we go. I have really good memories for this scene, so I'm excited to see it again. Go, Sally, go. Look at those bell bottoms. There's that brother I was telling you guys about, the hitchhiker. Serpentine. Serpentine. Dude's just like, nope, never mind. Silly Leatherface. Why not just drive? Why not just drive? That's probably one of the only gory parts of the movie, I think. Pretty busy street for bad guys. The truck driver just ran, kept running. Do a little dance, make a little love, get down. Well, there you have it. There's the ending scene of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That is actually the first thing I ever saw of that movie. I saw was the ending scene. My dad was flipping through the channels, and on HBO, what do you have it? There it is, the ending scene. And little me just about pissed himself because he was freaked out about like out of context, what the hell was that? You know, like I remember that just got seared into my mind. So I was very scared of this movie for a very long time. But then, like, I was scared of a lot of horror movies when I was younger, and they only like kind of fueled the fire in a weird way. So I only got more interested. I couldn't understand why it scared me so much. I couldn't understand why it would give me such bad nightmares. I mean, obviously, he's a guy trying to kill you and eat you and wear your face and stuff. So those are generally those are very good reasons to be afraid of something. But I knew it wasn't real, and yet, you know, I still, you know, my dad also had to go and say, oh, these are based on real things, right? You know, I'm like, oh, and he's like, yeah, one of the guys lived here in Wisconsin. I'm like, oh no, you know, so I totally just, it was a very weird experience for me. So I kind of, it took that in a very weird direction as to where I only became more obsessed with that stuff as time went on. I only became more fascinated with these movies, and yeah, so I have some Leatherface figures that we can look at. The first one I have here is there we go, is this Mezco Cinema of Fear. I think this guy's about like 9.5, maybe like, yeah, like right around the 9-inch mark. He is, if he's standing up straight, I think he'd be a little bit taller, but he is like crouching. Now this is cool. It's like part action figure, part, you know, like cloth clothing. So he's got like pants, the apron, the shirt. He's even got a little tie. Yay! Haha! And yeah, it's kind of like a stylized version of Leatherface. Leatherface was kind of chunky, but this guy's kind of like, he's just like really like out of proportion. He's kind of like wonky, you know. But I like that. It's part of like, that was part of the style of this toy line by Mezco Toys. And then I have another figure here, and this one is from NECA Toys, and they make a line of figures kind of reminiscent of the Mego figures. And Mego figures were like, you know, they're like around 7 or 8 inches tall, and they're like dolls basically. You know, they're action figures with clothes. And NECA makes a shit ton of horror movie related ones, like you know, your Jasons, your Leatherfaces, your Freddys. I have a Snake Plissken one that's really cool. And then this is the outfit from that ending scene that we just saw. So he can spin and twirl and be totally bummed that he lost his Sally. But yeah, he's also got this wonked up, bent up chainsaw here. But yeah, the detail on these is really cool. I really like these. I would say probably this Mezco one is probably one of my favorites. And then finally, we have a figure that I made. I really enjoy Ninja Turtle figures and stuff like that. They are made by Playmates Toys, and I did a series of custom one-off toys in my collection of figures. I took Playmates toys like TMNT or something like that, or Toxic Crusaders, and I did some Dick Tracy ones where I took those original figures and I customized them to look like horror movie characters. So I've done a Splatterhouse one. I've done a Freddy. I painted like one like Freddy, and this I've done an Ash from Army of Darkness, Evil Dead. But this one is one of my favorites. I took April O'Neil's boss from the cartoon show. They made a figure of him. He had a sandwich sculpted into his hand. And I turned him into Leatherface. I did Sculpey for the face here, and I added a human skinned face on top of his. I made this cool little apron, and I painted it, and then I tried to use accessories from the Ninja Turtles toy line, so it kind of aesthetically fits in with those turtles, and then I have them all proudly displayed all together. But yeah. So this is my Leatherface custom, extra chunky, extra funky. All right, and now we're going to talk about Texas Chainsaw 2, and so that is actually one of my more favorite of Tobe Hooper's films. Here I have the Blu-ray here. I also have the VHS behind me, but we're gonna look at this sweet art for the Blu-ray here. So this movie came out in 1986, so that's a while after the first one. This one has a 5.6 on IMDb, so it's a little bit lower. This one's more goofy. It's a little bit cheesier. I'd say if you like the slapstickness of Army of Darkness, Evil Dead, you know, it's kind of like around this time in the 80s, everyone and their grandmother was doing cocaine when they were writing and making movies. So these movies are really weird. We can take a look at the trailer for that as well. So we have that, and then we'll take a look at that, and then I'll tell you about the plot. That cannon symbol means something good.
13 years ago, audiences across America were horrified by the savagery of a faceless killer. In the wake of this bizarre rampage, he vanished. Now, after more than a decade of silence, he has come out of hiding. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. The Buzz is back. Directed by Tobe Hooper.
The Buzz is back. What kind of tagline is that? But yeah, so yeah, this came out in 1986. It's about a radio host. She's kind of like the disc jockey of the county, and her name is Stretch. Hey man, I don't write it, but she overhears a murder over her show, and it happens to be Leatherface, and his twisted brother Chop Top, played by the awesome Bill Moseley, and they and it's basically about the Leatherface and his brother and his family. They kind of want to cover up what they've done, you know. So it's because they keep murdering people and stuff. So they chase after her. They you know, they want to get her and kill her and get the tapes, and so they like attack her at the movie theater. Jesus, at the radio show place. And yeah, I don't want to give too much of this one away either, and I won't ruin the ending for this one because it's pretty weird and it's pretty cool. This one stars Dennis Hopper, Caroline Williams, Jim Seidow again as the dad. My favorite line of his is, "Really burnt my beans on this one." Like, it's just some great Class A one-liners in this. And then, of course, the awesome Bill Moseley. You might know him as Otis from the House of 1000, those Rob Zombie movies. I think it's a great movie because it's great. It's like really campy, but it still has that, like, it still has some pretty good jump scares for its time. I really like the characters, including the former Texas Marshal Lefty, played by Dennis Hopper. There's a part where he tries to fight fire with fire, right? So he goes to a hardware store and he buys he buys all these chainsaws. So he buys like 2 little chainsaws, you know, like little handheld, like obviously you hold a chainsaw with your hands, you don't hold it with your feet or something, but like tiny little chainsaws. So he had like dual wielding chainsaws, and then he gets this like big ass one that's like really long, and he uses that radio show host as like bait. So he like tries to set up a trap for them to like attack them, and he's really cool. I really like his character in there. His motivation is that he's trying to find out what happened to his nephew from the first movie, who was in a wheelchair, and Sally, the one who escaped in that clip that we watched, she actually went into a coma right after she went to safety. She just couldn't live with the terror of the Buzz, the chainsaw. So she went into some catatonic state. We do have a clip for this. This is the bridge scene. This is probably one of my favorite scenes of the entire movie. I love it so much. Here it is. It's so great. Here we go. I love the music in this too. Rude.
Fuck? Are you crazy?
He's just doing a cape
Back
thing.
off, big fucker! Hurry up, get out of here!
There's Stretch.
They gotta hang up.
Shit! Come on, hurry up! What the fuck? What the hell is that? There's some kind of geek! The geek's got up!
So the guy who got run over by that truck, that's actually his corpse. In the ending of the first one, that's their brother. That's the kind of people they are. They want to keep their brother with them and use him as a costume. I guess.
What you got there? What? Come on, what is that? I don't believe it! Come on! Oh, God! Oh, God! Oh, God! Yeah, come on, get out of here!
Buzzsaw.
Hey, hang up, man. Hang up. Hang up, hang up, hang up, hang up, hang up, hang up, hang up.
Get it! Shoot the bastard! Get it!
So where the first one wasn't very gory, this one is actually pretty gory, and you'll see why in a second here.
Mr. Assholes!
Major headache, man. Dude's name is Buzz. Oh my god, I didn't know. Hey, well that worked out. All right. So yeah, there's a bridge scene. That is a awesome clip. I love, like, you know, you get the feeling just from that little clip that of how goofy that movie really was, and just how weird it is. When I first saw that movie, I don't think I appreciated it as much as I do now. Watching it again on VHS, like probably like in the mid 2000s again, I started to appreciate it a lot more. So that was really cool to kind of come back. And now it's actually my favorite, one of my favorite films is. So that's pretty crazy. I have a Texas Chainsaw 2 Leatherface because if it's my favorite movie, gotta have him. I bought this loose off of eBay, so he doesn't have the original chainsaw. He actually has a magnet, chainsaw magnet that I found. So that's pretty funny. This one's also a Mezco Cinema Fear figure. Mezco was really just churning these out a couple years back, and now NECA is kind of taken over and really done a lot of the horror figures and stuff. So more power to NECA, but these figures are still great. So yeah. And now we're gonna move on to another one of Tobe Hooper's films. This time, nothing to do with chainsaws. This one is the Funhouse. This one came out in 1981. It has a IMDb score of 5.9. Just keeps going down. Or not, actually, this one's higher than Texas Chainsaw 2, which is really weird because I feel like this one isn't as good as a movie as Texas Chainsaw 2. So this one came out 5 years before Texas Chainsaw 2. And this one's about 4 teenage friends. They spend the night in a carnival fun house after they get stuck in it. And they're pretty much stalked and attacked. It's really goofy. It's really weird. the acting in it is really bad. I will say that. So be prepared for an ultimate camp when you got this. There's like all kinds of like traps and stuff inside this funhouse. You know, like the carnival, like it's like on a little track that you go on. You know, you get in like it's like a little roller coaster thing, right? And you get in and you go around, and then it's like, oh, booga, you get scared, or you know, like something pops out, or you know, if it's called a funhouse, it's probably you're meant to have fun there. So there's probably like, you know, like dumb, like, you know, like, I don't know if you've ever been to a carnival before. I don't know you. But I've been to a carnival before, and I've been to a funhouse before, and they have like little spinny tunnels, and they don't have swinging, you know, sharp shit and like nooses coming down and like grabbing kids by the neck. That shit wasn't there when I went to a funhouse, but in this one it is. So lots of weird. They have like this like kid who's like really into monsters and stuff, and there's like a whole little subplot with him. That shit could have been just like cut out altogether. But this is a good movie to watch if you've been drinking, if you've been smoking, or if you really want to check out like his evolution, you know, Tobe Hooper's evolution, because this is one of his like earlier films, but I still think it's a really good one, regardless of all this stuff. And I really like the monster in it. He's like a deformed kind of like inbred son, and he's like a helper at the funhouse, and he wears like a Frankenstein mask and gloves to hide his hideous face. I don't want to ruin what his face looks like, so I didn't include any pictures or anything. You'll just have to watch it and see for yourself. It's a really bad mask, and they just globbed Vaseline over it to make it work out. We have a trailer for that as well, so let's take a look for that one.
Who will dare to face the challenge of the funhouse? Who is mad enough to enter that world of darkness?
Act a little harder, man. I wouldn't kill
Something
you.
is alive in the funhouse. Something not alive like its father. Something better dead. Something that has the form of a human, but not the face.
This better be good.
It's gonna be great. Something that feeds off the flesh and blood of young innocents.
Come on, here we go. This is it.
Something that tonight will turn the funhouse into a carnival of terror.
I don't know what that thing is. We're gonna try to kill him. I just want to get the hell out of here.
The Funhouse, coming soon from Universal Pictures. The Funhouse. It's a carnival of terror from Tobe Hooper, the director who terrified you with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
That poor guy had a mouthful to say at the end there. So after this, Tobe Hooper went on to have the troubles that I was talking about. You know, he had the, you know, well, I mean, like Poltergeist was like a smash hit. You've probably all heard of it if you do like horror movies. You probably watched it one Halloween, you know, at least sometime. And but that whole like little thing with Steven Spielberg, it did kind of hurt his reputation. So he did make a three-picture deal with Canon Films. And those movies were Invaders from Mars, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and our next movie we're going to talk about is Lifeforce. And so that's a really interesting thing that he took that deal and he had to do all these. And he probably, if Canon Films didn't go under, I think he probably still would have been making films for them because that, I feel like that's where he kind of had the most freedom, because these dudes in Canon Films, they just kind of just threw money at him. They because he was like the first, not the first, but one like a really big director. That's what they were trying to do. They kind of just sunk money into films, hoping to get some kind of return. They would try to make as many films as possible to try and get some kind of return. And they tried to change up their tactic a little bit by getting a good director and trying to get him to pump out a bunch of movies to make money for them. So So this is quite the movie we're about to talk about. It's Lifeforce from 1985. I have the DVD or the Blu-ray right here. Here we go. And this a lot of the Blu-rays I've been talking about, they are from Scream Factory, Shout Factory, you know, one of those. And so definitely go and check these out. I got most of these off of Amazon, so you can totally go and buy one. Cool thing about this one is it has a reversible cover inside of it, so that's really cool. I reversed the one that was inside because I like the artwork on that one a lot better. This one has a 6.1 on IMDb, and we'll have the trailer, and I'll tell you a little bit about the movie while we watch the trailer. There's that Canon Films logo there.
From the director of Poltergeist and the writer of Alien comes a terrifying new film.
I'm getting a very small radar cross-section. 150 miles long.
So they're researching Halley's Comet, and then they pick up a spaceship.
The tale of Halley's Comet. There's something wrong.
And then they go to investigate, of course.
Something ancient. Something evil.
Jesus. Houston, we have a problem.
I had to throw that in there. The Houston shit.
Something hungry that's brought to Earth.
She's destroyed worlds.
That girl was no girl. She was totally alien to this planet and our life form. Totally dangerous.
We just found a body in Hyde Park.
So she's like a space vampire, and she like takes the life force from people.
Life Force.
And then she makes these like weird mummy zombies with them.
Close your eyes.
Visited you how?
In my mind.
It's already spreading. You didn't stop it. It's too late.
Come. Be with me.
Life Force. The terror has just begun.
Man, what a trailer, and what a movie it is, because it is one of the weirdest movies I think I've ever seen. You know, you got your movies like Troll 2, you know, they're just bad, and they're just doofy and weird. But this movie, this is like, had a big budget, you know, and Canon Films just like dropped like a shit ton of money trying to get this thing, you know, to look good, you know, and they were seeing the dailies, and they're like, man, this is incredible, we gotta pour more money into this. So it stars Steve Railsback, Peter Firth, you could say it either two ways, Matilda or Mathilda May. I'll say Mathilda because she's foreign. That sounded bad. And then Patrick Stewart. And some cool trivia is Patrick Stewart's first on-screen kiss is with Steve Railsback, because Patrick Stewart's character is possessed by that chick. So, like you saw in the trailer, it's about astronauts doing research on a comet, on Halley's Comet, and then they pick up an alien spaceship, and they said that it's like designed based off an artichoke, but you can clearly tell that it's very phallic in nature. And if you don't know the word phallic, it means it looks like a big old peen, like a big old ding dong, and so, I mean, I think, you know, you can say it looks like an artichoke all you want, but, you know, you know what it really looks like. See, so what else? So these astronauts go and they investigate the giant space penis, and then they break inside and they find these three naked space vampire humanoids. That was one of the only conditions one of the dudes from Canon Films, one of the producers, they're dropping all this money, you know, like millions of dollars into making this movie, and one of his only conditions is that the main chick, the Mathilda May, credited as Space Girl, she had to be naked the whole time. So what a condition, right? And the woman Mathilda May, she didn't know any English, so she had to like learn like a couple months beforehand and like while she was filming this movie. So that's really crazy. Like, and she's really good in the movie. Like you could say, oh, she's naked the whole time or whatever, but I think she's really good in it. She does a really good job. And they auditioned over 1,000 girls for that role. Like, dude, they were just looking at boobs all day. Like, come on, like, are you kidding me? So, as I was saying, these vampires, they make it to Earth somehow. I think like a different spaceship comes and takes what all the vampires out of the ship, and they start wreaking havoc on the planet. You saw all those zombies. They're like, they get so she like sucks out their life force. Right, and then they become like a shriveled up like prune raisin man or a woman, and there's a scene with a really gross zombie girl, and like if they don't feed in like 2 hours, they'll come back and then they'll just like turn to dust or something. So it's like really weird. There's like a lot of lore, a lot of like rules that are established but then aren't kind of like followed through with. It's kind of like regular vampires as well. There's like a sword that's like used to kill them. It doesn't even look like a sword, it just looks like a piece of fence post that broke off. But yeah, I highly recommend you check that out. I really like it because it has some insane visuals, just wicked graphics, like the lightning and the, it's like, if you like Alien, if you like that kind of thing, this movie is kind of like Alien, but like you turn down the suspense and then you turn up the just pure insanity. And then you I feel weird kind of comparing it to Alien, but there's a lot of like Giger-esque, set design and shit in there. So that's kind of where I got that from. Also, it's a very unique story. You don't see it was based on a book called Space Vampires, but I feel like it's better named Lifeforce. I like that name a lot more. But yeah, so it has a really good, unique story. So definitely check that out. I'd say it's definitely the biggest movie that he worked on. So yeah, if you want to find out more about Cannon Films and like all the stuff that they did, there's a really cool documentary on Netflix right now. It's called Electric Boogaloo, the Cannon Films documentary. That Electric Boogaloo, it's like a common joke because they made Electric Boogaloo 2, it's like, yeah, whatever. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. I won't go into it because it's not horror. I'm not going to go into it. But yeah, definitely check out that documentary. It's really cool. If you like, learning about film and you like learning about what goes into a film and just what the hell that people were doing in the 80s and like what the fuck was going through their minds and they're making these insane movies. So in closing with Tobe Hooper's films, he is the kind of director who became very dedicated to whatever vision that he had when it came to the film and whatever he was doing. He was very dedicated to the film itself, overworking himself. There's stories of him, getting hurt on the set all the time. Like a cog in the Funhouse, like nearly nearly killed him. And some extra like dove in front of him and got hit in the arm with a cog that like flew off. He constantly overworked himself. Like I said, he lived off of like a diet of like Dr. Pepper and candy bars and stuff. And so I brought some Dr. P with me to take a sip for him in his memorial. Here we go, guys, for the hoops. One of his someone on I talked about what I was going to be talking about on Twitter, and someone brought up to me that they were always bringing him Dr. Pepper, and even someone brought one of those beer helmets. It's like a hat or like a hard hat or something. I'm not sure. And then it has some like things on the side for your cups, and they just put Dr. Pepper in there so you could just so he was very dedicated, very. He kind of put work above all else, and he had a great sense of humor. You could definitely see that in a lot of his films, like The Funhouse and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, I think, and even Invaders from Mars, I think, and moments in Poltergeist. You can totally tell like his humor and where it comes out. And so yeah, rest in peace, Tobe Hooper. You opened my mind to a lot of movies and to a lot of film, and I can only imagine what you did for everybody else out there. So thank you for the screams, thank you for the scares. It is greatly appreciated. Now we are going to move on to the creator of the modern zombie, George A. Romero. We got a cool picture of him to bring up. There he is. Dude was a badass. He always had a cigarette in his mouth in interviews, and he's just that kind of guy. He just kind of has. He had that this like. When I think of like a director, you know, he's kind of like what I picture. You know, like the big glasses and stuff, and the cig and you know, I just kind of like I always kind of picture him and like what he was like on set and what kind of directions he was giving, you know, and stuff like that. As I said, he's the creator of the modern zombie. He's the director of Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, Land of the Dead. You know, he made a bunch of those. You know, the first three are like probably the best. I even heard that his son had directed a prequel to Night of the Living Dead. I think it's called. Oh no, I don't know what it's called. I don't want to say it's called Origin because it doesn't sound right to me. I don't know. I don't know the name of it. I'd only recently just heard about that. So look that up if you're interested in that. If you really like the Dead movies. He also directed Creepshow, Monkey Shines, which is totally awesome. It's about a movie where this guy gets completely paralyzed, and he's like in this chair, and he's got like the straw thing to like get around. He was like an athlete. He was like peak physical condition. He had like this great life. Everybody loved him, and then dude gets hit by a truck, and he becomes paralyzed. And so they get this. They put him in this program where they get a monkey, like a little monkey, to look after him and like do all the things that he would do. You know. I mean, not everything. Am I right, guys? But he would. This monkey was like being trained or whatever, but it was tested on previously, and so it builds like this psychic connection with him, and the monkey starts like hurting animals and people and like doing all this messed up shit. Definitely check that one out if you you're like, I like George Romero, but I don't want to watch like your typical zombie kind of shit. I want to I want to witness something new from him. So definitely check that out, and check out Martin. That's like a really good take on the vampire genre, or is it? You don't really know if he is a vampire or not. He also directed The Crazies and Two Evil Eyes. Romero, he was extremely viciously talented. He had a really good eye for I really liked a lot of the interesting angles that he took on things, including like casting. I mean, he didn't do it because in Night of the Living Dead, one of our main characters, like one of our main heroes, is black, and he didn't do it just because like he wanted to stir the pot or something. He did it because he was just like the best actor for the role. And then kind of for there, it just kind of like it like started this like, whoa, wow, this is super progressive and stuff. But he was like almost so progressive in the sense where he was just like, well, he's just the right guy. I don't really see what the big deal is. So and that's really cool, and that's really commendable of him. He had a great outlook on movies, great outlook on life just in general. And I wanted to talk about I wanted to talk about one movie, but it's an anthology film, so it has multiple stories within it. So you probably know what I'm talking about if you're a big fan of his, or in general. I'm talking about Creepshow from 1982. This movie has a 6.9 on IMDb. It stars Hal Holbrook, Adrienne Barbeau, Leslie Nielsen, Ed Harris, Ted Danson, and Stephen King himself. And the special effects were by the awesome Tom Savini, and he's also plays a garbage man in the movie as well. Tom Atkins is in the movie as well. He's really great. He was in Halloween 3 and Night of the Creeps. And even Stephen King's son is in the movie, so that's really cool. We have the trailer for Creepshow, and let's take a look at that.
Coming soon. Jolting tales of horror. Creepshow. From the author of Carrie, The Shining, and Cujo. And the creator of Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. You'll scream at ghastly ghouls. Cringe at weird kids. And shiver at the doings of evil doctors.
This is going to be extremely painful, Mr. Verrill.
Creepshow will grab you, grow on you, and give you the creeps.
No, this is going to be an entirely new experience.
Creepshow, the most fun you'll ever have being scared.
All right, there you have it. Yeah, so there's 5 different stories in this. So this would be what you call an anthology movie, and there's different stories. Sometimes they can connect, sometimes they don't. This one's kind of wrapped up with a prologue and an epilogue. But I'll talk about the prologue and epilogue after all this. I wanted to get into each little story, and I'll play a clip, and I'll tell you a little bit about what that segment was about. The first one is Father's Day. I want my cake, Bedelia. So let's take a look at that clip, and then I'll start telling you what it's about. These are all the kills. So it's about a wealthy tycoon, and he basically made his fortune making, bootlegging, fraud, extortion, that kind of shit. He was murdered by his spinster daughter, Bedelia. They're getting strangled right now. On Father's Day, he was like a piece of shit, and it's implied that he abused her, and he also killed her like sweetheart. And years later, she every year she would visit her father's grave on Father's Day, and this year that she comes back, she accidentally spills whiskey on the grave, and that's a callback to an Irish folktale, and because whiskey is known as some kind of life-giving liquid, and so she spills the whiskey on the grave, and he rises out of it to exact revenge on all the people who ever sought to take money from him. So yeah, this is a really, really cool segment. I really, really like this one. There's Ed Harris, good old Ed Harris. He does a really goofy dance in this, like previous to this. He also does this dorky yelp. Love that. Yeah. So yeah, so the dad he rises from the grave, and he starts to exact revenge on all these like shitty people who try to like take all the inheritance from him. And earlier in the film, he's like all he wants is cake. That's like what he keeps talking about for Father's Day, because he's like a screwed up dude at the time when he gets murdered. And here we go. It's like the most iconic scene right there. I got my cake. Dude just gained his like normal voice back. All right, there you have it. There is the first one, and then the second one is called "The Lonesome Death of Jody Verrill." We have some clips from that one as well. This one's kind of like more like a scene. Stephen King, he plays like a self-proclaimed lunkhead. He keeps calling himself a lunkhead throughout the whole thing, but he's like a doofus, you know, like, and this is so overplayed. This is probably the most overplayed, like, overacted segment. Oh, Jesus. I've been dipped in shit if that ain't a meteor. Like, dude is just like that. Like, he'll say that in a second. Like, it's so goofy. Because it's like a comic book. It's based off comic books. So it's...
dipped in shit if that ain't a meteor.
So George Romero kept telling him to, like, take it further, take it further, take it further. Stephen King wasn't sure, like, if he could do it. You know, he wasn't very sure. Tom Atkins actually wanted to play this role. But by the time that Tom Atkins had gotten a hold of the script, Stephen King was already in line to play this guy. So you're about to see he's about to screw with this thing. Probably not a good idea. It's too hot. Oh no. What do you think, man? I mean, you know, he lives on a farm. I mean, you know, probably doesn't know much about... So he thinks that he can take this in to the Department of Meteors and get money for it. And this is like a daydream of his. He hopes that he can make like $200 off this thing. Dude tries to like hustle him down, but it doesn't work. Because obviously he's more heroic and awesome in his mind than he really is. So after he thinks that he can make money off of this, he actually he's about to throw water on it. And, go to some bitch off. And then he throws water on it. And water's kind of an important thing about this this segment. Water only makes this thing worse. So you see, he burned his fingers. He keeps putting his fingers in his mouth. Oh no, he's got these gross blisters there already. He's like, I probably shouldn't suck on that. So he's about to throw the water on, and it's not a good idea because it actually cracks open. And now there's a bunch of quote-unquote meteor shit inside of it, and you know, he doesn't kind of realize what's inside, like what actually is the contents of this meteor, because what's inside the meteor is probably more important, right? So he thinks he's not gonna get any money for this broken meteor now. But he takes it out and he brings it back in the bucket. He puts it on his porch and shit. And then over time, he starts to grow moss like all over him. You saw that in the trailer as well. That he grows all this moss all over him. You know, it starts on his fingers. It's like on the beer bottle he touched. It's on the knob that he touched for the TV. You know, and he keeps drinking. And he like wants vodka and stuff. It's kind of heavily implied that he's like thirsty. And then he sees visions of his dad telling him not to go in the tub and all this stuff because he's like about to get into the bath. And then he finally does. And it doesn't end so well for him. I don't want to ruin the ending for it because I would love for you guys to see just exactly what happens to him. So the next one is the one starring Ted Danson and Leslie Nielsen. This one is good. This one's, I think there's a few that are very heavily developed, and I think that this one is one of them. I really like this one. It's called Something to Tide You Over. Leslie Nielsen plays a murderous wealthy creepster, and he gets revenge on his cheating wife and her lover, Ted Danson. He brings Ted Danson out to the beach, kind of like threatening that it'll hurt him, and he brings them out there and he buries them up to their necks in the sand on this secluded abandoned beach that he lives on. And the tide starts to roll in, and it's like, you know, super suspenseful. And he makes Ted Danson watch on like a TV monitor. Like he drags like a TV out there, and like there's like a long ass cord and like a VCR and like a tripod like set up to watch his to record him. And so like he watches his girlfriend / drowned while he's drowning himself, you know, and so it's like super hard to watch. It's pretty gut wrenching. And then they Leslie Nielsen doesn't realize, but they come back. You know, I mean, obviously he realizes now, but they come back, and they get their revenge on Leslie Nielsen for being such a prick. They're definitely not in there with you. I love the special effects on these. These are great. Like, they're totally waterlogged looking and gross. I can hold my breath for a long time. And Leslie Nielsen, like, usually, you know, he's like the funny guy. He's Airplane, you know, the Naked Gun series, stuff like that. Was he in Airplane? I don't know. But he's really good in this segment. Like, he actually is, like, he's pretty creepy. Like he actually creeped me out. And then is like, so. All right, guys, that's it. That's what happens to him, or, you know, whatever. But yeah, I really like that one. That one's really good. All of these are just, they have parts of them that are all just really good. So this next one is called The Crate. And this one is really good too. I mean, I just love this whole damn movie. This is why I'm just talking about one of his movies. So this one's about a janitor and a college professor named Dexter Stanley, and they find a crate hidden under the stairs of his college for 147 years. The professor and the janitor open the crate, and the janitor is eaten, as you can see right here. There's like a Tasmanian devil, Yeti type of thing inside the crate. His name was Fluffy on the production set. That's what Tom Savini called him. And then a student is attacked, and then the professor, the one who's witnessing this shit going down right now, he runs to his mild-mannered friend Henry Northup, and that's the guy who was strangling and shooting his wife in the head earlier. Those are daydreams of his, because his wife is so like unbearable. She's like a drunk, she's abusive, she's like a real piece of shit to him, and established in earlier scenes, she's just the worst. Like, she's super hard to deal with, and so he like daydreams about killing his wife. And a funny thing is the wife is played by Adrienne Barbeau, and she was married to John Carpenter for a little while, and he's the one that convinced her to do the role. So the professor, you know, he like sees about what's about to happen right now, and he goes to Henry, and Henry kind of sees this as an opportunity. The guy with the shitty wife. So he sees this as an opportunity to get rid of his wife, because two people have already been murdered, you know, and they're already, you know, and like there's no bodies because they keep getting dragged into this crate. Man, I love this sequence right here. He's about to get bit into the neck, and it's great. Look at that. Ready, and oh. So good, so good. And so Henry he like cleans up all the blood, and he calls his wife there. And then, yep, right, what's about to happen right now. The creature comes out, Fluffy's, and then there's Adrienne Barbeau. And he's like, don't worry, bro, I got you. I'll take this bitch off your hands for you.
Just tell it to call you Billy.
That's like something she says to her. She's like, just call me Billy, everyone does. But yeah, that's The Crate. That one is really good too. I like that it plays up an interesting angle. Like, it's not all about the monster. I mean, for the good middle portion of it, it is kind of like all about this monster. But they kind of had to establish it. But I like that it's really about this guy who's had it with his wife, and he's like such a wuss, and she's like, what would you do without me? You know, was I calling him Harry or is his name Henry? God, yeah, it is Henry. Was I calling him Harry? I don't know. Whatever, guys. Yeah, so I think that one's really good as well. Like I said, all these are really good. So the last one that we're gonna look at before we talk about the epilogue is They're Creeping Up on You, and this one is my mom's favorite. So that's pretty funny. And this is actually where I get my fear of bugs from. I really don't like bugs. I really just I'd rather not. You know, it's not so much like the bugs themselves. It's just the fact of how small they are and how fast those little shitheads can run. You know, I don't know. I just don't like anything small and fast. So this one is about a real piece of shit, racist, Scroogey business type man named Upston Pratt. And he has a fear of bugs. I have the name written down for the phobia. Misophobia? Is that it? Miso soup phobia? You're afraid of miso soup? I don't know. So he's like a hermit, and he lives in like this state-of-the-art apartment. And he's like, you know, he's like a germaphobe, and he keeps seeing these bugs, and he's like calling the manager, and he's like calling all these people. There's one dude on a vacation. He like threatens them, you know, to fire him if he's, you know, doesn't do something about all this. And, you know, I mean, I would be pissed too if I lived in an apartment and like all these bugs are coming out. Like I'd probably lose my hair at the rate that this guy has. So this is the part where there's like rolling blackouts, and he slowly, all the bugs start coming out of all the crevices and all this shit, and he gets thrown into his like panic room, and he has a heart attack, because the whole thing is that he drove a guy to suicide, and the wife of the widowed guy keeps calling and like threatening him and like telling him, you know, when he dies and all this shit, you know, that she'll be, you know, happy. And so it's kind of like where he like has a heart attack, and then like all the bugs like break out of him and stuff, and then they all like disappear. And there's also a really great doorman. He's not a doorman. He's like the maintenance guy, and he like comes up, and he has really good interactions with Upston Pratt there, and so that's a really good one. For a long time, that was like the only one I remembered from that movie. And besides the crate, I remember the crate a little bit, and because that one like if when you're really young and you see these movies, like a lot of these plot lines they'll probably go right over your head, because you don't understand, like, you know, like, what's an affair? I don't know what an affair is, you know. So the bug one was very like straightforward, you know, like it didn't matter to me about, like, I knew that this guy was a jerk because he was yelling at people, but I didn't, you know, so I kind of knew what was coming to him, and he was scared of all the roaches and stuff. So a large number of those cockroaches from that segment were hissing cockroaches imported from Guatemala, and they were unable to. So when they were trying to like buy them at first, right? And so like a New York cockroach is like 50 cents per cockroach, and they needed like over 200,000 of these fucking things. So 50 cents per cockroach, I don't think that's gonna work. So they had to improvise. They hired these oh god, the name of it, a bug doctor, a guy who researched bugs. You know, I'm sure a pathologist. No, is it? I don't know. Correct me in the comments. Whatever. Pathologist or not, they had these guys go and go to Guatemala, and they went in these caves because these roaches feed off of guano, which if you've seen Ace Ventura, you'd know that that's bat poop, and so these roaches feed on that, and so they dig a hole in the cave, and then they'd turn out the work lights, and in like 2 seconds, this like 3-foot hole would be filled with cockroaches. Absolutely disgusting. So they got like a shit ton. They got like over 100,000 of these things, and then they segregated them like in these giant barrels. I think they were like garbage cans or something, and they put like egg containers in there and like nuts and like all this stuff for them to feed on and like multiply. And then they had like their own trailer like to themselves because they smelt nasty, because when you work with them they give off like a gross pheromone, and then they fall apart because they want to like lose weight so they can like run faster and slip under shit. Ugh, God, I'm like gagging thinking about it. And they also so there's like an urban legend surrounding this segment in particular about the movie. So they filmed it in Pennsylvania because that's where George Romero lived at the time, and he filmed that movie there. And so they were on this set, and you know, they got all these cockroaches, and they're about to like dump like 1,000 cockroaches on the floor to like for the scene, or like put them on the dude, and so like if you know anything about movies, you know it's like an enclosed set, so it's like the room or wherever they're shooting, but there's no roof, kind of like this. No, just kidding. There's a roof. So it's just like 4 walls, you know, like or maybe not, maybe it's only 3 walls or something like that, you know, and is whatever works to get the best shots, and so when they would dump these things out, you know, they would scatter, they would go everywhere. There's all these lights going on and so they would all scatter, and they would like crawl into like everything. So in the segment he has like a bunch of electronics, so they would like crawl inside of the electronics, and like they'd like break them apart. Like they would break apart a telephone, right? And like inside the telephone, giant like fist-sized cockroaches are like dumping out and like falling out, and so like when they're using equipment like forklifts and shit like that to move around the set, you know, these cockroaches are like infesting, they're like running and scattering into these like forklifts and stuff. So they tried to contain it, you know, because they can't let this kind of thing happen because of health code regulations. So they said that they caught all of them, and then they also tried to put Vaseline, like they coated like mounds of Vaseline on like the tips of the walls for the set, right? And then they would dump them out, and they would go up the wall, and the guys are like, oh yeah, this'll stop them, you know, like it's Vaseline. They'll get all gunked up, and they'll go, okay, I'll go back down. But no, they just plowed right through all the Vaseline that they had, and then they infected it. So the urban legend that I was getting to is that these Guatemalan, like these invasive species of cockroach have infested Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to be exact. And yeah, that I thought that was a really cool, interesting bit of trivia for that, because that's insane. Like that whole part where like the room, that whole like little area is like all full of them. Like that's real. Like there was no CGI back then. There was no, you know, like you could have added things in post and stuff, but they really wanted to get that effect, and so those are all real cockroaches. Like, and the dude, the guy playing the old man, he did not give like one shit about those bugs. He like did not care. Like I see, like if the bug is like too big, I think I'd just be like, okay, I'm out of here, you know, like I don't, God, whatever. So now we're gonna get into the prologue and epilogue story. Joe Hill is playing a little kid named Billy, and he's played by Stephen King's son, and he's being scolded and slapped in the face by his dad, played by Tom Atkins, for reading the comic book Creepshow. He's being scolded, and so his dad throws him away. He's like these are going right in the fucking trash, you know, like he's just such a jerk. He's like such an ass. And the mom's like oh, aren't you being too harsh on him? Like she can't like say like 2 words without being like blah blah blah, like snapping at her or something. So you know, it was like your typical kind of like, you know, setup like that. And then so the dad goes out in the garbage and like throws away the comic. And then you've seen the parts in the trailer where the creeper kind of like is outside the kid's window, and he's like luring him outside, like, come take it to get your book back, you know. And it starts this like really cool animated sequence that kind of begins the film. And then after they're creeping up on you, they it cuts to the next morning, and has his dad is like having breakfast, and then the kid is like the Tom Savini earlier had noticed that when they're picking up the garbage or whatever, that the voodoo doll ad in the comic was missing, and he's like, oh, the voodoo doll thing is missing. So it cuts to the kid, and he's like starting to stab the voodoo doll, and his dad's like choking and shit, you know. And that was the end of the movie. Creepshow was inspired by Easy Comics. I have one right here. You can take a look at that. And it was based on their twisted and ironic style, it was like inspired by, you know, this and Twilight Zone and other classic horror stories. The movie has like great lighting, great cinematic, great characters, great practical effects by Tom Savini. It was made with a big budget, but it was like it was like made like a small budget movie, but even though it did have a really big budget. You can also check out the documentary called Just Desserts. I just got this. It's a documentary about the making of the film. So please check that as well. I got it for like $8 on Amazon. Sorry, I'm going really fast, but I got to wrap it up. And I wanted to get to these two things last before we end the show. This is a recreation of the comic book. So this is the screenplay, or not the screenplay. It's like a comic version of the film, and you can pick this up on Amazon too as well. So this is like the comic form. It wasn't made for like the longest time. It wasn't a thing. It was only in the movie that there was actually a comic, and then finally they decided to make it. There's the King Master right there. Cool fun fact: Stephen King wrote the screenplay for the first Creepshow in only 60 days. So he said, give me 60 days and I'll have it for you. And finally, this is really, really important to me. The soundtrack is integral to the film. They were going to use just stock music and stuff like that for the movie, but the quality degradation was really bad on these. So what they did was an AV guy, he worked in the art department. He took a shot at it. He was only working on music for a little while, and they made the soundtrack. So this is the WaxWorks vinyl. This just came out. Like, I just bought this. I think there was a release in 2014, but they also just re-released it. So go to WaxWorks vinyl and check their stuff out. Yeah, so John Harrison is the one that made all the music alongside of George Romero. So there you have it, guys. So George Romero, he was a great director. He will be extremely, extremely missed. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys following, watching. So please hit the subscribe button. Follow for all the next horror-related, toy-related, movie-related news that we might have. You can follow me on VideoVomit on Instagram, Twitter, Tumblr. So I'm usually posting on Instagram the most. I'm trying to get back into Tumblr a little bit, and I suck at Twitter. So please follow me and help me get involved in that more. So until next time, guys, same bunker time, same bunker place. Take it easy, guys.